I thought, this is a stupid drug. It's so silly. It's like, it's without consequences. That's what I thought, is that this is such a mild drug, you know? It's like, everyone I know who's really laid back smokes pot, and, you know, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
I grew up with parents that drank every evening and had cocktails every night. And because my family was functional, I didn't know there was a problem till I was like 11 or 12.
My mother used to work whole day from 8 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock of the night for support me and my brother. And I remember I feel so big resentment from the society, from the people. And the marijuana made me feel a little better, you know, just like I feel that emptiness, but never was satisfied.
When I began drinking in high school, I drank to get drunk right away. I had blackouts in high school, and when I got to college, I joined a group of people that didn't drink heavily, but they did do marijuana, and they smoked pot, and I tried it. I was a little bit scared of it, but I tried it, and I really liked how it felt. It was, after I got over how strange it felt to get my bearings, I felt relaxed and euphoric and comfortable and enjoyed it, and I no longer had blackouts, and I could control my drinking.
I didn't know my biological father and my stepfather. He was the only male in my life then. He left when I was 8 years old. And then as I grew a little bit older and I started hanging out with a group of men that were probably about 6, 7 years my senior. And that's where the beginning first started right there, because that's what they did. And I liked the way it made me feel. It took me to places that I had never been before.
We had rituals where we would get together to roll the pot and get high, and then we had these games we'd play, which included driving on country roads and going to swing sets and playing, and we had a lot of fun.
And I used to sell dope in the beach for tourists, you know, and I used to do whatever I have to forget marijuana, and every day I can have a day without smoke, like 2 or 3 joints.
And they also were functional, and they were getting their degrees in college, and they were planning what it was going to be like for them to be an adult, which included getting an education, having a job. I wasn't doing that. I was living from one day to the next, one high to the next, one bag of pot to the next, and putting it all off.
I used marijuana to escape. I would go somewhere inside myself and wouldn't have to be myself, and I would lose myself in that fantasy land that I had created.
When I first got into high school, I remember walking to school, and I always passed this one alley that was right across. It was called the Alley. And I'd always look down there, and there'd be guys, you know, high-fiving and looking around. And I can remember the first day that I was asked to join them. It was a day that I decided, instead of to walk by the alley, but to kind of cut down the alley and then kind of walk by the group. And I was asked to join them, and I think it was, you know, kind of like the test, you know, hey, is this guy cool? And so the joint came around to me, and so I just took it, and I took a hit off of it and passed it, and then instantly people started talking to me. It was like, you know, all of a sudden I'm a part of this group. I got that acceptance that just made it just, I'm home.
It was the best feeling of my life, and I loved that feeling. I loved it from the first. We laughed. It seemed like a wonderful way to live, and that was my drug from there on out.
Marijuana. It's been called the baby of drugs, the safe drug. Over 70 million Americans have tried pot at least once. About 5 million of us smoke it at least once a week. Compared to cocaine, methamphetamine, even alcohol, pot appears tame, in the short run anyway. Once we take a look at long-term users, it's a different story. Pot becomes every bit as devastating as other drugs. Marijuana affects hormone levels in both males and females. For males, this means decreased testosterone levels, a lower sex drive, and lower sperm count. Women who continue to smoke pot when they're pregnant are altering their fetus's brain, liver, and metabolism. A joint has the same cancer-causing chemicals as a cigarette, but in greater concentration. Smoking one joint is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes. Sinus problems, bronchitis, and other respiratory problems are common with long-term marijuana use. Head, neck, and lung cancers will also occur in greater frequency among heavy pot smokers.
Some of the times when I coughed or anything like that, felt my lungs, and I would spit out this nasty brown stuff. And I would look at that and think, oh, that's truly nasty. And I'm thinking to myself, that's what's inside of you? You know, I'm thinking to myself. And then I would think about, man, I've been doing this for half my life now, because I was 32 and I've been getting high since I was 14.
Despite some serious effects on other parts of the body, the organ that suffers the most negative consequences of marijuana is the brain.
The main chemical in marijuana that produces its behavioral effects is called THC. And THC is the stuff in the marijuana plant that goes to the brain and interacts with specific locks in the brain, which activate this kind of warm, fuzzy feeling, if you want to call it that, but also the memory disruption, the time slowing down, the lack of perhaps desire, competition, ambition. It does all of those things.
The potency of marijuana now is about 25 times greater than it was in the 60s. Back then, you know, people could smoke pot and not get near the high that they get now. There's marijuana out there today that's just incredibly intoxicating compared to what it was 30 years ago.
Actually, my wife had a really hard problems to communicate with me. Sometimes we were driving in the car and she was like, could you read the map? And I even have idea how you can read a map, you know? I mean, it's kind of like, duh, you know, totally out of myself.
I became very complacent. You know, it didn't matter if I did well or not. And that was the same with, you know, school tests and stuff like that. You know, I became very passive. You know, I got a C, you know, big deal. Got any weed?
Well, most people who use chronically, they've taken the edge off life in general. That includes the bad stuff. But it also means that their ambitions, their dreams, their motivations to set any goals, to try to achieve those goals. I mean, it is hard to be competitive. And I don't mean that in a good or bad way, but it is hard to actually go out there and set yourself a goal and try to meet it if, in fact, you are so laid back that you can put off everything till tomorrow or the day after that.
I can remember working at a convenience store, and, you know, I was barely able to scrape together enough money to buy about a quarter ounce of pot a week and be very conservative with it. You know, my car ran sometimes. Sometimes I didn't even have a car. I was taking some classes here and there, but I certainly wasn't going to school full time. And I was really just existing, and I didn't even realize it. As long as I had a little pinch of marijuana to put in the bowl in my bong, the world was okay. As long as I could get high, I was going to be all right.
And the problem with marijuana, for me, was that it didn't have consequences. I was a really good student, and so I was using pot all through high school, and I was getting straight A's. And I was living proof that pot did not hurt you, and I would make that case to anybody who asked and people who didn't, that it was a completely innocuous drug. You know, and where did all that change? Real slowly. And all of a sudden in college, I wasn't getting A's anymore. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't getting B's anymore, or C's, or I wasn't finishing classes. I wasn't, you know, but just very, very slowly. And finally, I dropped out. tried to go back, dropped out again. My dream was to teach, to get a PhD and teach college level English. And I wasn't going to class, let alone completing any assignments. But if somebody asked me, what are you going to do? I would have said, well, I'm gonna get my master's and then my PhD and then.
So you had these dreams, you had these high aspirations, and it was something you really, really wanted to do. It wasn't.
I was gonna do it.
Right.
I thought I was gonna do it, and yet, in retrospect, I look back. I was not only not moving towards those things, I was going as far in the other direction as fast as possible. And yet, in my mind, I still believed somehow this was down the road for me.
Right. Someone's not going to smoke a joint and typically go wrestle the cops. They're not going to be selling their grandfather's Rolex for pennies on the dollar to buy a bag of pot. But what happens is, instead of doing these things, they're going to spend years on end in mediocrity. They're going to spend years on end not fulfilling their dreams. Their passions are going to slowly get fogged over by their addiction.
After several years of being in this group of friends, as they migrated out of school and graduated with decent degrees and got good jobs and left, there I was, still without a degree, addicted to pot and alcohol, and no plan. And it was a very depressing place to be.
Progression is a symptom of addiction. The disease progresses in two areas. First, we become obsessed. Getting high takes priority over everything. Second, our bodies develop a tolerance to pot, which means we need to smoke more to get the same high.
What happens when you run out? Do you spend hours looking for it? Do you scrape your bong stem out and smoke the resin? Do you search under your couch where your rolling tray was, looking for roaches or pieces of buds that have fallen on the carpet? That's addictive behavior. That's not socially using something that's harmless. That is addiction at its finest.
The morning was the best high, so I always took a chance to get high in the morning. And at that point in time, it only took a half a joint to get me high. And then that's when I really liked it, Before I did anything else, before I went and brushed my teeth or anything like that, the first thing that I would do was find my little Bowen lighter and have it. And what was the crazy thing about this, I had set this up the night before because I knew one of the first things I wanted to do was to get high and get that buzz on.
I can remember many times at 11 o'clock at night not having any pot before I went to sleep, and I'd get up and I'd go out and I'd go find it. 11 o'clock at night, it's snowing, whatever. My roommates, going, it's no big deal, man, we'll just get some tomorrow. And me going, well, I just want to make sure I have some when I wake up. But the fact is that I couldn't go to sleep without it.
In the morning, it became more of a half a joint to a joint, And it seemed like when I didn't have that joint in the morning, my day didn't go right. It's just like, well, I know the reason that these are not happening today because I didn't get high this morning.
It was so subtle. I didn't know it. It was still a social thing, but then I found myself getting high by myself. I found myself start lying to people about me having it and telling them to call back because I'll have some later, but I'd still have some, but I didn't have enough to sell or I didn't have enough to get them high. So I started keeping it for myself. I started hoarding it, protecting supply.
Only thing I knew is that there was something wrong with me because I knew that something that started out on the weekends, Friday nights, half a joint, had progressed to every single day in my life, at least 5-6 times before noon.
So I start to think I have problems. Of course I have a problem, but always you deny that that you got a problem.
My denial system is so efficient. I mean, it just had protected pot to the bitter end. And that's why I say it's my drug of choice, because my brain truly protects this and says I can still use. And I know it does.
So I was either smoking marijuana in treatment or I was smoking marijuana right out of treatment. I mean, I never considered it to be the reason why I was at treatment. You know, for me it was always, you know, the crack or, you know, the alcohol or cocaine, whatever it was I was taking was why I was at treatment. You know, the lawyer wouldn't leave me alone, you know, or the judge wouldn't leave me alone, or my parents wouldn't leave me alone. The dog wouldn't let me pet it anymore. You know, there was some reason I had to go to treatment other than the pot.
And what happened with my paranoia, I start to don't trust in my wife, you know, don't trust in my kids, don't trust in anybody. Feelings that always somebody's watching me. See, I feel like when I walk in the street and I see a cop, I was feeling that he knows that I have dope in my pocket, or they know that I was been smoking whole day, you know, and I was so afraid that I just shut the windows and get in bed, shut the door and keep me in darkness, because I don't want anybody to see that I was there, because I was scared.
One of the really most profound consequences with addiction to marijuana is the emotional isolation, the social isolation. You may be in the company of other people, but you're truly in your own little world, especially with family members, with parents, with spouses, with children. There's something about marijuana that just puts this bubble around people, and they're really emotionally isolated.
This guy who I knew from graduate school died of AIDS, and my friend and I went to his service, and we both used. We were so high when we went. It was like being able to be alone in a group. It was like I didn't have to be being high made it so that I could be with other people, because otherwise I really couldn't. It felt really exhausting to me, and so being high would allow me this separate space. I could be cut off. It would pull a boundary in that I didn't have naturally.
When people are out there in an active addiction, they're really oblivious to the impact it's having on relationships. They don't realize it, but the only relationship that matters to them is their relationship with their bong and their bag of dope.
For me, anything that I was talking to somebody about when I was using was, you know, just gathering information from them. I may be nodding and saying yes, but I'm looking them up and down. I'm looking for bulges in their pockets to see if they've got any money. I'm wondering if they've got any pot. I'm smelling to see if they've got any drugs on them. I mean, that's all it was to find out if this person had some drugs, and how am I going to get this person to do these drugs with me? You know, how am I going to get this person to smoke this joint with me?
The relationship with my mother at that point in time started deteriorating a little bit, because my mother could see through the mask that I wore with other people. My mother could see right there. She just didn't look at me, she looked in me, and I didn't like that. The people that I hung out with, the peers that I hung out with at that point told me, and I told them that I could quit any time. You know, that's what I thought. I didn't understand the horrors of addiction that lied for me and the path that I was on. I didn't see that at all. It was a very bleak, scary road that was ahead of me that I traveled down.
The bottom awaits every addict. Each of us takes a different route. Some of us limp downward, others of us tumble headlong. However we get there, we all end up in the same place.
It had gotten to the point where I knew my life wasn't going how it was intended to. You know, that there had to be more to life.
I remember feeling spiritually dead, mentally dead, You know, I would sit on the end of my bed and cry because I didn't like the way I felt anymore. The drugs weren't doing what it used to do for me.
You know, I can remember driving and not wanting to be in the car, yet not wanting to stop and get out, not wanting to be alone, yet not wanting to see anybody. Just completely irritable, discontent, just not wanting to be in my own skin.
I went looking for a bowl full of pot. I couldn't find it. And I got panicky, and I got upset, and I started going through everything I owned. I was even down on the floor thinking that some had fallen out and that's when I was crawling around looking for just one bowl full of pot. I thought, oh my, I'm addicted. I am hooked on pot. And that's amazing now in retrospect that it took that long to see that. And this is years of use. I probably used 15 years.
But what happens when you are in drugs, just take your dark side, you know, who you know really are, but you get really evil, really sick. You lost the respect for yourself. If you lost the respect for yourself, of course, you can't have respect for anybody else.
Think about all the effort that you put towards using and where it got you. And then think about what people are telling you to do. And I would ask that you consider giving recovery some time, like you've given using some time. You know, you listened to what drugs had to tell you for years. Now listen to what some recovery people have to tell you for a little while and see where it gets you. You know, I was the guy that people said would never get it. Definitely. I was the guy that didn't want to get it. And, you know, I'm afraid to say that I have it because I don't want to lose it. But something has happened, and I'm not going to mess with it.
Recovery is an inside-out job because it is so easy to dress the outside up.
Recovery is a process that begins with abstinence. To stay clean, we must give up all mood-altering substances. Our brains have been permanently changed. From this point forward, using alcohol, pot, or any other drug will bring us right back to the worst part of our addiction.
Addiction is not about cocaine. It's not about heroin. It's not about marijuana. It's about us. It's about the addict. And every addict wants to find a loophole. They want to be able to alter their mood and get away with it and not be chained to it. Addiction is about being chained to a mood-altering substance. And it's a very seductive thought that the heroin addict or the cocaine addict can use marijuana in moderation. It's not going to happen. Once a person becomes addicted, they're an addict.
And my sponsor said to me, oh, by the way, you can't get high. And I was like, what? No, I gave up alcohol. I don't have a problem with pot. Pot's not my problem.
That old myth pops in there that this is, you know, this is a benign herb that I can use socially, I can use normally. And hey, guess what? I found a loophole I can use. And one of two things happens. Either they're reaching for the bong shortly after they wake up in the morning and they're high all day and they're spending their lives eating Oreos and watching Nick at Night, or they go back to their original true love, the cocaine or the heroin or whatever.
Well, for the last 2 years, I had stopped being active in my recovery. I had disengaged from recovery. And so I wasn't using, but I wasn't healthy either. And I knew I couldn't drink. There was no question in my mind that I couldn't drink, I couldn't use any pills, you know, I couldn't do any coke. And heroin was my yet. I was never, you know, I was never going to do heroin. Well, the minute I started smoking pot, I was smoking all day long, every day, and that lasted for about 2 years, where I just sort of hovered above life. And then I drank, and then I used heroin.
People don't get into recovery because they decide they don't like getting high anymore. That's never going to happen. People get into recovery because they really, on a gut level, come to terms with the fact that they're not making the choice anymore. They've become enslaved by this disease, and that obsession that someday some miracle of control will enable us to use like normal people, that doesn't go away. Recovery is about, more than anything else, keeping that voice at bay and not forgetting the consequences.
You know, I'm real grateful to be in recovery, man, and the process of it, because today I know I'm not on top of recovery. I'm in the process, which is gonna take a long time. You know, I work this step like 3 days after y'all bury my ass. You know, first step is always an art, because I'm always gonna be powerful.
And this guy told me, he said, well, he said, I told him that I wanted to go somewhere else. He said, where do you want to go? He goes, you can go anywhere in this world. He said, you can even go to the moon. He said, if you don't take care what's inside of yourself right here, he said, you will go to the moon and start smoking moon rocks, and your life will be unmanageable there. He goes, so what's the difference? Either you recover here or you die.
Because this is a disease. It's like a cancer, you know. It's like a cancer. You can stop to smoke, but the disease is there for the rest of your life. You know, so you can do it better for you, or you can do it worse. But this is for the rest of my life.
They said that's why the newcomer is the most important person at any meeting. You know, because addiction's still out there whipping butt, taking names, you know, because there's one thing I know, the fight was fixed. And I had surrendered to the program and the program recovery.
When a person decides that they've gotten to the point in their life where they need to become abstinent, recovery is what they replace that with. That's what they replace that high with. I'll see people who've been smoking pot for 15 years, 20 years. Virtually every person that they know and associate with gets high. So when they decide they're going to quit, they can go one of two ways. They can stay in the same circle of friends. They can be miserable trying to not use in the presence of this whole culture, or they can replace that culture with recovery.
To accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Peace.
I wanted that. I wanted that so much. I wanted that more than anything at that particular time, for people to see me and getting these clean time, because they would sit up and everybody would come around and they would hug you and tell you to keep coming back, and just having that close relationship with people. They told me they would love me until I learned to love myself, and to keep coming back and the things would get better. And so I did.
The recovery community for me is a godsend. I mean, it's I don't know how to describe it other than without it, I would be using. If I didn't have the people that are in my life now, you know, recovery wouldn't be worthwhile. It's the people that make recovery worthwhile.
I have a few friends that I used to smoke with my friends and use and drink and whatever. And I remember they say, you've changed a lot and you're not part of the crew anymore. And like I tell my friend, you know, well, besides to get stupid with marijuana and speak just the stupid things, we don't have nothing in common anymore.
That's what meetings and fellowshipping with other people and not using a day at a time for 948 days has really helped me out, you know. And the reason I count my days is because I had to remember how I felt 949 days ago. I don't live in the past, but I know one thing, that I keep a small crack to look at that, to remind myself never to go back there.
It's pretty important to be around the people that's healthy, and it's really important to keep you in that position, because the people is smoking marijuana is people that live in his own misery. And of course, the misery want misery, and they want to put you in the same misery they are. So it's really important to my life. I can go through a week without go couple meetings. Everybody there give me a lot because through his experience that I listened, I learned to value what I have today.
Everything I have in my life has happened since that day. 4 years after that meeting, I went back to school and actually studied and went to class. A remarkable strategy for attending university, and it worked brilliantly, and I graduated. I got a real job. Before that, I had a series of part-time jobs I sort of strung together because I couldn't hold a real job. I paid off debts that I had accumulated over the years of my drug use, massive debts. I actually had a real relationship. I got married. I had children. Everything I have in my life came after that day I walked into that meeting.
Okay. Are your hands clean?
No, they're not. I have a true bond with my mother today, something that I never felt that I had before. It's probably at least about 19, probably then.
I felt, like I said, I felt hopeless.
I understand that, and I
useless. Like no matter what I did, okay, so you're just my mom, you don't know anything.
The whole thing was, I wasn't ready.
Well, I understand that too.
You know,
now that I have learned more about what addiction is and
I can relate to her as an adult now. I can relate to her. I don't fear being around her no more. I don't run from her anymore. And to be able to have her in my life 100% and have that relationship with her means the world to me.
I mean, the gifts to me include I could let go of micromanaging every single minute because I could trust the idea that I'm not in charge, that I'm led to where I need to go, that the relationships that happen in my life are there for a reason that I don't have to figure out. And that's been a gift. That's a gift for me. Another thing that I've been able to do is pursue hobbies and ideas, such as going to school. And went back to school again and picked a degree I wanted and did very well at it and loved it. And I'd like to go on.
And for me now is get the trust again from my kids, my wife. It's gonna be hard, but it's not impossible if I work and I do the right choices. And I'm ready to do the right choices now because I'm okay, because I'm clean.
Ahí alrededor porque está todo mojado. Entonces puedes ir ahí y agarrar eso.
I'm working in a program right now for people homeless and people with problems, alcohol and drugs. And it's beautiful because I can see who I used to be and they can see what could be if you want.
Once again, I had me back, the person I had lost way back in 1978 when I first started getting high. I didn't know at that point in time that I had stopped growing emotionally and spiritually or anything like that. And I have learned to really start to love myself and become the man that I sought out to be a long time ago. Unconditional love, because you know what? That teaches me to love myself. And when I start to learn to love myself, I can love you too. You know, so that's very important right there.
I graduated high school 365 out of 366. And I'm going back to school Monday. And you know, I'm nervous, I'm fearful, you know, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, all those things, but I'm excited. I used to dream about how, you know, I could run this business and, you know, I should be, you know, sitting in the executive office and making the executive decisions. And I've started 2 businesses. One is a construction remodeling business, and then another is sober housing. I have a couple things to address that I see it's going very well is the keeping of the common areas clean. It's important to have a nice place to come home to. You know, if you have a depressing day at work and you come home to a dump, it only feeds into being more depressed. You know, I made a decision to get sober. I made a decision, I've made lots of decisions that were dreams. I've been able to make decisions and follow through on things that were dreams before. And that is a product of my recovery. I mean, that's a miracle to me.
October 19th, I picked up 7 years. So I'm working on year number 8. And so it's really nice at my point to think, gosh, I did that. You know, I got 7 at this point, and my life's changed so much. And people would tell their story. They would talk about, oh gosh, so much has happened to me since I got recovery. And I'd think, yeah, right. Oh, sure. You know, and owning it for me, I would think, no way. There's, you know, I'm just a lost cause. I'm not going to get any of those things. And it's so much about attitude and changing mental perception and deciding that, yeah, you can. You know, I can have these things if I just decide to follow through and to do it, to show up.
And I have a resurrection. I can recover my values, myself, and I can really smile for real. It's nothing that I need put inside myself for be happy, you know. The real me is somebody. They have the right to be happy. They have the right to get better. They have the right to live. And they have the right to be respected. And when you are a drug addict, you also keep away from your rights. So I recovered the right to be happy. I recovered the right to be respect for the people. And you don't need to demand that respect anymore. You own the respect.